Hey everyone, TruthSurge here again, back in the saddle, so to speak. Had to do a little work, earn a little money, and work on my studio, trying to soundproof it a little bit better. But I'm back, and we're looking at the Jesus myth theory, my personal views about it, and my take, and my studies, as well as those of other people like Earl Doherty and G.A. Wells and Dennis R. MacDonald. And in the last video, we saw something very peculiar. We looked at 41 different references to Jesus' second coming spread across 14 different authors, and not one of them referred to it as a second coming. We saw them call it a coming, an appearance, an appearing, and even 6 of the references called it a revelation, something unknown being made known, something being shown for the first time. And that only makes sense if we think that Jesus was never on earth. The earliest Christians would have naturally believed Jesus would appear at the end of time for the first time. They were eager to see him. They were eager to see his glory, because until that time, until he came at the end of time, he was just scant passages in the Old Testament, knowledge, a mystery. He was up in heaven. It had all happened, but they found out through the Old Testament writings, and they were eager to actually see him in person. So this is what the Jesus myth theory presents, is that Jesus never was on earth. He was a mythical, a heavenly being, and that's how we're approaching this examination. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you another piece of evidence that supports the Jesus myth theory. But before I do, I want to give you the obligatory anecdotal story. A few years ago, before I hurt my back, I was doing cardiovascular cross training in the mountains of Tibet. And I ran across an old Buddhist monk friend of mine, and he was up on a mountaintop meditating. And I thought that was pretty amazing, because he was in the raw. And so I thought I needed to get this knowledge. He knows some things. He's got this wisdom going on. So I walked over to him and I said, "Yo, Steve, how can I learn as much as you? How can I know what you know? Help me. How can I learn to be wise?" And he just sat there. He didn't blink, and I figured he was just frozen to death. But then he opened his eyes, and he looked up at me, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, I can't recall. Oh, no. He said, "Sometimes, in order to learn, one must unlearn." And I thought that was just really deep. And it's really applicable to the Jesus myth theory. And sometimes the biggest impediment to learning is that you think you already know. There's no way Jesus could not be a historical character. And so that knowledge that you have is an impediment, a stumbling block, a roadblock to actually learning anything about it. Because maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. And if you allow what you know to keep you from even examining an alternative view, then you'll never know how strong that alternative view is, or how weak it is. And so that's just something to keep in mind as we go through these videos. Just give it a chance. Just all I want to do is put it on the table, lay it out for you. And then if you find it convincing, great. If you don't find it convincing, that's great too. So anyway, that's what we're doing. We're looking at the Jesus myth theory, and we're trying to lay out one piece of evidence at a time. I've already given you just one piece. And in this video, I'm going to show you something else that I think is pretty interesting. Now, if early Christianity didn't go down the way the Gospels describe, then they had to go down some kind of way. It had to happen some kind of way. And that's what the Jesus myth theory sets out to show. It's not that Jesus just didn't exist and boom, boom, and we're done. The Jesus myth theory is a comprehensive theory of Christian origins. It has to answer everything. If Jesus was never on earth, he had to be killed somewhere. He had to be killed by someone or something, and he had to be killed at some time. All these questions, the Jesus myth theory answers. In this video, we're going to look at just one of these questions and try to answer it. The question of when Jesus was crucified. Was he crucified in the first century like the Gospels say? Or did the early Christians believe he had been crucified ages before the first century? Paul tells us in his letters that this gospel of his, the fact that Jesus existed and was killed and raised from the dead, this knowledge about that was hidden from mankind throughout the ages. And we're going to look at that verse as well as some other ones to see if we can make heads or tails of this. Did the early Christians believe that Jesus had been crucified long before the first century? Did some of them even believe he had been crucified when the world began, when the world was created? Let's get our shovel and our pick and see if we can dig our way to the bottom of this.